Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to my channel. My name is Muniba Mazari. I am a motivation storyteller. This story is change you life. Please don't forget the video and subscribe my channel today. Start the new lesson. At 4 a.m. the world is silent. The streets are still, the skies are dark, and even the wind seems to hold its breath. It is in this stillness, this almost sacred quiet, that you begin to meet someone you often ignore, yourself. There is no rush, no noise, no endless notifications. Just you, your breath, and your thoughts. In our everyday lives we are surrounded by noise. From the moment we wake up, the world begins to pour itself into our minds. Expectations, responsibilities, distractions. The volume of the world rises so quickly that we forget what our own voice sounds like. But when you choose to rise at 4 a.m., you give yourself a moment that belongs to no one else. You give yourself silence. And in that silence, something powerful happens. You begin to hear. You begin to hear the quiet whisper of your heart that's often drowned out by the demands of the day. You hear the thoughts you've pushed away. You feel the weight of emotions you've avoided. It is raw, yes, but it is also real, and sometimes truth only speaks when everything else is silent. Silence isn't emptiness, it's space, sacred space. It's the pause that allows reflection, the stillness that invites honesty. When the noise is gone, there is no mask, no performance, just you, and for many that can be terrifying, but it's also necessary. Because we cannot begin to grow unless we are first willing to meet ourselves exactly as we are. At 4 a.m. there is no one to impress, no one watching, no stage, and without an audience, you finally find the freedom to stop acting and start listening. You listen to the dreams you shelved, you listen to the fears you denied, you listen to the questions you never answered. This is not weakness, it is awakening. Most people are afraid of silence because it reveals too much. It pulls you out of the roles you play and into the person you are. But if you dare to sit with it, you'll find that silence is not here to judge you. It's here to introduce you to yourself. And what a powerful meeting that is. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. You begin to reclaim the parts of you that got lost along the way. The courage, the curiosity, the passion, and slowly, silently, you begin to rebuild from within. The silence of 4 a.m. is not just about peace, it's about clarity. It gives you a moment to align with what matters, to look at your life without distraction, without excuses. It asks hard questions. Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you becoming who you truly want to be? And in the silence, you can't escape the answers. It is not easy to face yourself in the quiet. It takes courage, but it is in these quiet hours that transformation begins. Not because everything changes instantly, but because you finally become aware. And awareness is the first spark of change. Many of us are chasing external voices, approval, validation, praise. But at 4 a.m., none of those voices are around. And that's a gift, because it forces you to stop listening outward and start listening inward. To trust that your inner voice, though quiet, knows the way. You may feel uncertain. You may feel broken. But silence is not here to fix you. It is here to help you feel. And sometimes feeling is the first step toward healing. The more you sit in silence, the more you learn that it's not something to escape, but something to enter, with openness, with honesty, with heart. And when you do, you discover a strength you didn't know you had, a resilience that was always there, hidden beneath the surface noise. You realize that the answers you've been seeking in the world were always within you. But you needed silence to hear them. Silence doesn't speak in shouts. It speaks in nudges, in the gentle tug at your soul that says, "This isn't right," or "This is where you belong." And those whispers, once heard, are impossible to ignore. In the end, waking up at 4, AM isn't about the hour, it's about the intention. It's about choosing to meet yourself where you are, before the world has a chance to tell you who to be. It's about returning to yourself, again and again, until the voice inside you becomes louder than the noise outside. Discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't arrive with applause or admiration. It doesn't shine brightly or call attention to itself. In fact, it often feels lonely, uncomfortable, and repetitive. But beneath its quiet and steady presence lies the beginning of every real transformation. Discipline is the foundation. It is the first act of self-respect, the first step toward change that actually lasts. We often wait for motivation to strike, thinking transformation begins when we feel inspired, but inspiration is fleeting. It visits like a breeze, light, temporary, gone before we can grasp it. Discipline, on the other hand, is different. It is deliberate. It is a choice made in silence, a decision that doesn't need a reason beyond the fact that you know you must. Discipline says, I will show up, even when I don't want to. It says, I will continue, even when it gets hard. That kind of consistency doesn't feel exciting. But transformation isn't about excitement. It's about commitment. The small, daily acts of showing up for yourself. Those are the bricks that build the life you dream of. Most people want change, but few are willing to be disciplined. Because discipline requires sacrifice. It asks for time when you'd rather sleep. It demands focus when you'd rather escape. It requires saying no to the easy thing in favor of the right thing, and in those moments it can feel thankless. But each small act of discipline is a seed, and in time those seeds grow into strength, purpose, and self-trust. Discipline is powerful because it teaches you who you are when no one is watching. It strips away the performance and reveals your character. When you rise early to write, train, study, or simply sit with yourself in reflection, you're telling your soul, you matter. You're reinforcing the truth that your life is in your hands, that you are not waiting to be saved or discovered. You are choosing to build. It is through discipline that you reclaim control over your mind. Every time you honor a commitment to yourself, no matter how small, you're retraining your brain to believe in your own capacity. And slowly, your actions begin to align with your values. That's when real transformation begins, not in grand gestures, but in ordinary moments of deliberate choice. You don't need to move mountains in a day. You need to push one stone forward every day. That is discipline. And over time, that steady movement reshapes not just your habits, but your identity. You stop being someone who wants change and start becoming someone who embodies it. There will be days when you feel like giving up. Days when nothing seems to be working. But discipline doesn't ask you to feel good. It asks you to keep going. It tells you to trust the process, even when the results aren't visible yet. Because the truth is, transformation often happens in the dark, long before the light reveals the progress you've made. Discipline builds resilience. It teaches you that discomfort is not your enemy. In fact, discomfort is the exact place where growth happens. When you sit with the urge to quit and choose to continue instead, you're becoming stronger, not just in action, but in spirit, and that strength carries into every part of your life. We live in a world that promises shortcuts. Quick results, instant gratification, but transformation doesn't come in a package. It comes through patience, through the decision to do what's hard not once, but over and over, through showing up without applause, without recognition, simply because you made a promise to yourself. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about standing up again after you fall, realigning after you drift, and in that process, you begin to build a quiet confidence, the kind of confidence that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Because you know who you are, you know what you're capable of. It doesn't matter how far you have to go. What matters is that you start, and that you keep going. Transformation is not something that happens to you. It's something you do to yourself. One disciplined action at a time. In a world full of distractions, being disciplined is a radical act of self-loyalty. It means choosing long-term vision over short-term comfort, choosing growth over stagnation, choosing to rise when it would be easier to stay where you are. Every time you say yes to discipline, you're saying yes to the person you are becoming, not the person the world expects you to be, but the one you've always known you could be. The one who chooses action over excuse, the one who doesn't wait for perfect timing, the one who transforms not by chance, but by choice. We all carry scars. Some are visible, etched into the skin like stories that never quite faded. Others are hidden, buried deep within the heart and mind where no one can see. But whether seen or unseen, scars are part of who we are. They are evidence of what we've endured, the pain we've faced, and the battles we've survived. And yet, too often, we are taught to hide them, to cover them, to treat them like imperfections. But scars are not signs of weakness. They are signs of strength. They are not your shame. They are your proof that you are still here. A scar means you went through something that could have broken you. And it didn't. Maybe it did for a while. Maybe it brought you to your knees. But you got back up. And that mark, that memory, that moment, it stayed with you. Not as a reminder of defeat, but as a symbol of healing. Because scars only form when something begins to heal. That means you didn't give up. That means you didn't stay down. When people look at you, they may not see your scars. But you feel them, and sometimes they ache, not physically, but emotionally. They ache in the quiet moments, in the memories, in the fears they left behind. But instead of fearing that ache, what if you embraced it? What if you looked at your scars and said, "This is where I bled, this is where I broke, and this is where I became"? Society often rewards perfection. It tells us to smile when we're breaking, to be strong without ever showing struggle. But true strength is not in the pretending, it's in the enduring. It's in the honesty of saying, "I've been through pain and I'm still standing." It's in the courage of choosing to live openly with your wounds, not because they make you weak, but because they make you real. Scars tell stories that are too deep for words. They carry the moments you thought you wouldn't survive, the nights you cried alone, the days you doubted yourself, the heartbreaks, the failures, the traumas. And yet, you're still breathing, still trying, still loving, still hoping. That is the kind of strength the world needs to see, not the polished, perfect version of you, but the raw, brave, authentic one. It takes strength to live with your scars. It takes strength to walk into the world knowing that some people will misunderstand you, judge you, or dismiss your pain, but your scars are not for them, they're for you. They are reminders that you are capable of healing, that you are more than what hurt you, that you are a survivor, not a victim. Your scars can become your compass. They can show you where you've been and guide you toward where you're going. They teach you empathy, compassion, resilience. When you've been broken, you see others differently, you listen more deeply, you understand pain in ways that those who have never fallen can't, and that understanding is not a weakness, it's a gift. Do not let the world make you feel small because of what you've been through. Do not let anyone convince you that you are less worthy because you carry pain. The truth is, your scars make you human, they make you relatable. They make you strong in the most beautiful and profound way. Strength is not just about standing tall. Sometimes it's about crawling forward when you can't stand. Sometimes it's about waking up and choosing to try again, even when everything inside you says not to. That fight, that fire, that's what your scars represent. You are not broken because you have scars. You are whole because you have healed around them. You are not defined by what hurt you. You are defined by how you kept going. And each time you choose to keep living with an open heart, despite everything you've faced, you turn your pain into purpose. When you embrace your scars, you give others permission to embrace theirs. You show them that healing is not about hiding, but about being seen. You show them that strength is quiet, humble, and often invisible. You show them that courage is waking up each day and saying, "This is who I am, scars and all, and I will not be ashamed." You didn't come this far to cover up what made you. You came this far to stand in your truth, to own your story, and to wear your scars like medals, not because you wanted them, but because you earned them. We live in a world obsessed with perfection. The perfect job, the perfect body, the perfect relationship, the perfect plan. We are constantly bombarded with images that make us feel we must have it all figured out before we even begin. But waiting for perfection is the quickest way to stay stuck. Perfection is an illusion, a moving target that keeps shifting just when you think you've reached it. What you really need is not perfection. What you need is purpose. Purpose gives direction when everything else is uncertain. It gives meaning to the struggle, the failures, the messy middle. Perfection tells you not to try until you're ready. Purpose tells you to start, even if you're trembling. It tells you to move forward, even if the path is unclear. Because purpose doesn't ask for flawless execution. It only asks for your heart. When you live for perfection, you become a prisoner of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of mistakes, fear of not being good enough. You keep editing, adjusting, planning, preparing, hoping that someday you'll finally be ready. But that day never comes because perfection is never satisfied. It always wants more. It always finds a flaw, and in chasing it, you forget what matters most. You forget why you started, but purpose is different. Purpose is powerful. It gives you permission to be imperfect. It allows you to show up messy, vulnerable, unfinished, because purpose doesn't care how polished you look. It only cares that you show up. It only cares that you care, that you are willing to use your life for something greater than fear. Purpose is not always loud. It's not always grand or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's as simple as wanting to help someone feel less alone. Sometimes it's waking up and choosing to be kind when the world feels cold. It's staying true to your values even when no one's watching. It's loving deeply even when you've been hurt. That is purpose. That is power. When you lead with purpose, you begin to see your imperfections differently. They no longer feel like reasons to hide. They become tools for connection, bridges that bring you closer to others. People don't connect with perfect. They connect with real. They connect with struggle, with truth, with heart. And the moment you let go of the pressure to be perfect, you give yourself permission to live fully. Purpose also gives you resilience, because when you know why you're doing something, you're more likely to keep going when things get hard. And they will get hard, but purpose reminds you that it's worth it, that every setback, every failure, every moment of doubt is part of the journey, not a detour, not a sign to quit, but a necessary step on the path of becoming. Perfection is exhausting. It demands too much and gives too little. It robs you of joy, of spontaneity, of growth. It keeps you comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, but purpose energizes you. It gives you focus. It pulls you out of bed in the morning, even when your body is tired and your heart feels heavy. It says, keep going, not because you have to, but because it matters. There is no perfect time to begin. There is no perfect version of you that will suddenly appear one day ready to chase your dreams. There is only this moment and your willingness to say yes to it. Say yes to your purpose. Say yes to being seen even when you feel flawed. Say yes to showing up for the people who need you exactly as you are. When you live with purpose, you stop living for approval. You stop chasing validation. You start living from the inside out instead of the outside in. You measure success not by perfection, but by alignment. Alignment with your values, your truth, your inner calling. And that kind of life is not always easy, but it is always fulfilling. You don't need the perfect words to make a difference. You don't need the perfect circumstances to start over. You don't need the perfect plan to take the first step. You need a reason to keep going, a reason to rise after falling, a reason to believe that your life has meaning beyond how it looks on the surface. Let go of perfect. Let go of the pressure to get everything right. What you need is something deeper, something more enduring. You need the fire inside you that says, "This matters. I may not have it all figured out, but I am willing to try. I am willing to grow. I am willing to live a life of purpose, even if it's messy, even if it's hard, even if it's far from perfect." Healing is often spoken about like a miracle. We hope for it. We wait for it. We believe that with time, everything will eventually feel better. And while hope is beautiful, while it can be a light in the darkest moments, hope alone doesn't heal. Healing is not something that just happens to you while you sit still and wish for the pain to pass. Healing begins with habit. It begins with what you do every day, not just what you believe could happen someday. When you're hurting, the smallest actions feel impossible. Even getting out of bed can seem like a mountain. But that first act of moving, of showing up for yourself even when it hurts, is the beginning of healing. Not because the pain vanishes, but because you're choosing to be an active participant in your own recovery. You're no longer waiting for time to do all the work. You're stepping into the process. Habits are not about grand gestures. They're about consistency. They're about doing one thing, one small thing, again and again until it becomes part of you. Drinking a glass of water in the morning, writing down one thing you're grateful for, going for a short walk, saying no when you mean no. These habits might seem insignificant when your heart is broken or your mind is heavy, but they are acts of self-respect. They are signals to your soul that you matter, that you are worth showing up for. The problem is, when you're in pain, you want a breakthrough. You want something to change everything all at once, but real healing is slow. It's not always visible. Sometimes you do the right things for weeks or months and feel like nothing's happening, but healing isn't always loud. It's not always dramatic. It often happens quietly in the background as you keep practicing the habits that support your well-being. You don't heal just by reading inspiring words or hearing comforting advice. You heal by taking those words and turning them into action. Hope may open your eyes to the possibility of a better future, but habit is what gets you there. Habit is brushing your teeth when you don't care. Habit is journaling when your thoughts feel too heavy to write. Habit is reaching out to someone when your instinct is to isolate. Healing doesn't ask you to be strong every day. It asks you to try again every day. Habits also create safety. When your world feels out of control, having something you can count on, even something small, can ground you. It reminds you that you still have agency, that you can still make choices that move you forward, even if it's just by an inch. Those inches matter. Those tiny steps, repeated often enough, become a path. And one day you look back and realize how far you've come, not because of a sudden leap, but because you built a new way of living through habit. Healing through habit also means unlearning. It means noticing the ways you've been coping that no longer serve you. It means replacing self-blame with self-compassion, criticism with care, avoidance with awareness. These changes don't happen overnight. They happen each time you catch yourself slipping into an old pattern and choose, even once, to do something different. There will be setbacks. There will be days when the pain feels just as fresh, when the habits feel too heavy, when hope feels distant. But those days don't erase your progress. They are part of the process. Healing isn't linear. It's not a straight line. It's a spiral. You will revisit old wounds, but each time with a little more wisdom, a little more strength. And your habits are what carry you through the setbacks. They keep you rooted when the storm comes again. Hope can keep you alive, but habit teaches you how to live. Habit helps you create a life where healing isn't a destination. It's a way of being. It's the way you care for yourself without waiting to feel worthy. It's the way you keep going even when you don't feel like it. It's the way you rebuild trust with yourself, piece by piece. You don't need to know exactly how you'll heal. You just need to know the next right step. And then take it again tomorrow. Healing begins with habit because healing is not passive. It's a choice you make every single day, not because you feel ready, not because it's easy, but because deep down, some part of you knows that you deserve a life beyond the pain. And that life is built not on hope alone, but on what you do with it. There is something sacred about the early hours of the morning, a quiet space before the noise begins, before the world rushes in with its demands, its distractions, its expectations. In that silence, when the sky is still dark and the world still sleeping, you have a choice. You can stay curled up in comfort, or you can rise. You can rise before the sun, not just as a habit, but as an act of becoming. Becoming your own light in a world that often forgets to show you the way. When you rise early, you're not just waking up, you're reclaiming time that belongs to you, time untouched by emails, conversations, responsibilities. Time that is yours to create, reflect, breathe, grow. In those moments, you don't need to be anyone else. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to be with yourself, honest and present. And in that stillness, you start to notice things, the rhythm of your thoughts, the weight you've been carrying, the dreams you've been pushing aside. This is where clarity lives, not in the noise, but in the quiet. When the world is sleeping, you get to hear yourself, not the version of you shaped by expectations, but the voice that's always been inside, whispering your truth. Rising before the sun is not about discipline for its own sake, it's about creating space to listen. To decide who you are becoming, to move intentionally toward the person you want to be. You become your own light not by waiting for inspiration, but by creating the conditions for it. You show up when no one is watching. You do the work when there's no reward yet. You sit with your thoughts, your fears, your hopes, and you begin to shape your life from the inside out. That inner light, the one that feels dim when life is heavy, starts to glow again. Not because someone gave it to you, but because you found it yourself. There is power in choosing yourself first thing in the morning, before the obligations, before the noise, before the world has a chance to define your day. You choose to rise for your mind, your body, your soul. That act of showing up early becomes a reminder that you matter, that your time is valuable, that you are worth the effort. It is not always easy. Some mornings feel heavy, some feel pointless, but each one is a brick in the foundation of your becoming. When you rise before the sun, you learn how to lead yourself. You learn that your energy does not depend on the weather, on the mood of others, or on perfect circumstances. You become less reactive and more rooted. The world may bring chaos, but you have already anchored yourself in quiet purpose. You have already set the tone for your day, grounded in who you are and where you're going. And slowly, without needing it to be perfect, you begin to see change, not just in the external world, but in your inner landscape. You feel stronger, not because life is easier, but because you've chosen to meet it with presence. You feel more certain, not because all the answers are clear, but because you've made time to ask the right questions. You begin to trust yourself more, because every morning you show up, even in the dark, even when it's hard. Becoming your own light doesn't mean you'll never feel lost. It means you learn how to find your way back. It means you understand that light is not something outside of you. It is something you cultivate. Through intention, through stillness, through daily acts of self-respect. It grows when you choose yourself again and again, long before anyone else can see the progress. The world may not always understand the quiet courage it takes to wake early and face yourself. But that doesn't matter. This journey is yours, and in time, the light you build within begins to spill over. It touches everything you do. It radiates in your work, your words, your presence, not because you chased perfection, but because you chose to rise with purpose. Every sunrise becomes a symbol, not just of a new day, but of your own rebirth. You are not waiting for someone to light the way. You are not hoping the world will slow down long enough for you to catch up. You are choosing to meet the day before it begins, to meet yourself before the world does, to rise before the sun and step fully into your own light. In a world that constantly demands more, expects faster results, and glorifies the illusion of perfection, we forget that transformation doesn't arrive with a loud announcement. It comes quietly. It begins in the stillness of the early morning, long before anyone is watching, long before the world starts spinning with noise. It begins when you decide to stop waiting for the right moment, the perfect conditions, the approval of others, and instead choose to create meaning from within. This is not about grand gestures or overnight success. This is about waking up literally and metaphorically at 4 a.m. and realizing that the power to change your life has always been within you. Silence is no longer something you fear, it becomes your sanctuary. When the world sleeps, you hear yourself clearly for the first time. You begin to understand that your inner voice, the one that has been buried under layers of distraction and doubt, holds the answers you've been seeking outside yourself. The early hours teach you that clarity doesn't come from constant motion, but from intentional stillness. They remind you that before you can do more, you must learn to be more, and being more starts with listening to your truth, your pain, your purpose. Discipline, the kind that doesn't chase perfection but chooses consistency, becomes your first act of self-love. It's not glamorous. It's not always inspiring, but it is the gateway to transformation. You wake up not because you're never tired, but because you've made a promise to yourself that your life is worth showing up for. And every time you keep that promise, you rewrite the story that said you couldn't. You begin to understand that freedom doesn't come from escaping structure. It comes from mastering it. When you are disciplined in your habits, you are no longer a slave to your impulses. You are no longer waiting for motivation. You become the architect of your own energy. Your scars, once hidden with shame, become your strength. You stop trying to erase the past and begin to embrace it as the ground you grew from. You wear your scars not as a burden, but as a badge of survival. You learn to love the parts of you that once felt broken, and in doing so, you teach others that their healing is possible too. When you live in your truth, scars and all, you become a mirror for others. You become a reminder that strength is not the absence of pain, but the decision to rise in spite of it. You no longer strive for perfect, you seek purpose. You understand that the most beautiful lives are not flawless, they are lived fully, with risk, with vulnerability, with honesty. You find peace not in having everything figured out, but in knowing that your actions are aligned with something deeper. Purpose becomes the compass that guides you when everything else feels uncertain. You stop needing to be the best in the room and start needing to be the most real. Because being real, authentically, courageously real, is what touches lives, opens doors, and leaves a legacy that perfection never could. Healing no longer feels like something out of reach. It becomes something you create through habit, one choice at a time. You stop waiting to feel better and start building the systems that support your becoming. You realize that healing is not about erasing the past, but learning how to live with it gracefully. It's about creating rituals that protect your peace, habits that rebuild your trust in yourself, and routines that remind you of your power. Hope alone cannot heal you. It must be married to effort, and every day you choose to do one thing that nourishes your mind, body, or soul, you build a bridge from who you were to who you're becoming. You rise before the sun not because it's easy, but because it's meaningful. You rise before the world demands anything from you, because those quiet hours are a sanctuary for your soul. You rise to remind yourself that you don't need external validation to claim your worth. You don't need the world to see you before you decide to see yourself. In that space between night and morning, you light your own fire. You set your own tone. You become your own light, not waiting for life to get easier, but daring to get stronger, more grounded, more intentional with every breath. You understand now that change is not a sudden event. It's a commitment. It's the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening. It's the way you hold yourself accountable when no one is watching. It's the decision to return to your why again and again, even when the how feels hard. You are no longer chasing transformation like it's something outside of you. You are embodying it every single day through the way you live, the choices you make, the energy you carry. This journey is not about waking up at 4 a.m. because it's trendy. It's about waking up to your life, waking up to your power, waking up to the fact that no one is coming to save you and no one needs to. Because you were born with everything you need. You are not here to fit into someone else's mold. You are here to create your own. You are not here to live quietly beneath the weight of your fears. You are here to rise, to reclaim, to redefine. Let others chase shortcuts. You will build something lasting. Let others seek perfection. You will walk in purpose. Let others look for light outside themselves. You will become your own sun. The world does not need more polished people. It needs more present ones. More real ones. More people who are willing to do the work no one sees. And if you are one of them, if you are willing to rise in the dark, show up in the silence, and choose yourself again and again, you are already becoming who you were always meant to be. So rise, not because life is easy, but because you are no longer willing to sleep on your potential. Rise because the person you are becoming is calling you. Rise because it's time. Rise because you are ready. Rise because you now understand. You don't need perfect. You need purpose. You don't need to be unscarred. You need to be real. You don't need to wait. You need to begin. Rise before the sun and become your own light. The world is waiting for you. And more importantly, you've been waiting for you.